The story begins deep inside a dangerous dungeon where three powerful adventurers have just finished an intense battle. Working together, they manage to defeat hundreds of demons and even force the Demon King to retreat. One of the warriors, named Gorin, is extremely proud of what they accomplished. Even though they failed to kill the Demon King, he believes they dealt enough damage to leave him badly wounded. The blonde hero, named Eric, agrees with him. He says the injuries they inflicted should be enough to keep the Demon King from attacking again for quite some time. The third member of the group, a mage named Luck, seems far less interested in celebrating their victory. Instead, he keeps staring at one of the Demon King's severed arms that was cut off during the battle. Gorin and Eric tell Luck to stop worrying about the arm and simply enjoy the fact that they survived. They jokingly tease him by saying that being such a nerd about strange things like this is probably the reason he still has not found a girlfriend. Changing the subject, Eric says they should hurry back home because the battle caused him to miss the birth of his child. Luck hears that and says moments like that are exactly why he has chosen to stay single. But Eric and Gorin immediately disagree with him. They explain that having a family should never be seen as a burden. To them, it is one of the greatest blessings a person can have. Before the conversation can continue, a large group of demons suddenly appears and surrounds the three adventurers from every direction. Luck quickly studies the situation. He immediately realizes that after everything they have already been through, there is no chance they can win another direct battle in their exhausted condition. Without wasting a second, Luck creates three magic circles at the same time. He then tells Gorin and Eric to leave everything to him and escape while they still can. Eric and Gorin immediately shout back at him. They tell him to stop saying such ridiculous things because there is no way they are going to abandon him. Luck does not argue with them. Instead, he silently casts an earth barrier. A massive wall of earth suddenly rises between them, trapping Eric and Gorin outside the battlefield while leaving Luck alone to face the demons. Eric and Gorin desperately pound on the barrier and yell at Luck to stop this madness. However, Luck refuses to listen. He calmly reminds them that they both have families waiting for them back home. That is exactly why they have to survive, even if it means leaving him behind. As the demons surge toward him, Luck unleashes an energy spell that tears through the first wave and drops them where they stand. Standing over the bodies, he recognizes the uncomfortable truth that he's already pushing the edge of what he has left, and the demons show absolutely no sign of stopping. Things take a sharp turn for the worse when the demon general suddenly materializes, grabs him by the throat, and begins draining his life force directly. When she tosses him aside and walks toward him slowly, clearly expecting to finish things, Luck turns her own technique against her, using the same mana-absorbing skill right back on her and exercising her on the spot. That kind of instant adaptation is only possible because of a unique learning ability Luck carries that allows him to absorb and replicate any spell used against him. What follows is several months of grinding through that same dungeon, cutting down demons without end. Whenever exhaustion caught up with him, Luck would cast a spell called Marionette, a technique that keeps his body fighting on its own even while he sleeps, letting him recover without ever fully stopping. After months of this cycle, Luck begins to wonder whether he's finally cleared the place out. Then the Demon King suddenly comes back, hurling a massive fireball straight at him. Luck throws up a barrier and absorbs the hit, genuinely stunned that the Demon King has recovered this quickly given the beating he took the last time around. He charges in and attempts his Drain Touch, but the Demon King counters with an invisible barrier that absorbs the skill entirely. From there, Luck finds himself being steadily overwhelmed, and the situation reaches a low point when the Demon King's Hexblade shatters his sword completely. Left without a weapon, Luck abandons close combat and shifts entirely to sorcery, firing off his imprisoning Hellfire and Drain Touch simultaneously. Both attacks connect at the same time, putting the Demon King in an impossible position. He can either burn alive in the Hellfire or have his life force consumed by the Drain Touch. He has no good answer for either. A blinding explosion follows, and when the light finally fades, Luck crawls up from the ground and takes stock of the situation. The Demon King is finished. He lets out a quiet celebration, takes the Hexblade as his prize, and heads for the surface. Once he gets there, he quickly realizes he has no idea where he actually is. On top of that, his adventure card was incinerated somewhere during the fighting, leaving him completely broke and without any form of identification addition to his name. After that, he heads to the royal capital. The moment he arrives, the guards stop him and call him out for walking around naked, and they end up giving him some new clothes to wear. His first thought is to go straight to Gorin's house. When he gets there, he's shocked at how massive the mansion is. He asks right away to see Gorin, but the butler turns him down, assuming Luck is just another fan trying to meet him. After that, Luck decides to head to the Adventurers Guild to get his guild card reissued. On the way, he notices a stone statue standing in the middle of town that wasn't there before. He asks a passerby about it, and the man is stunned that Luck doesn't recognize who it is. He explains that the statue is of Saint Luck, the famous hero who fought in the dungeon to hold back the demons for an entire decade. Luck suddenly realizes the statue is of him, and that everyone must have assumed he died in the dungeon, which is why they built it in his honor. He is also surprised to learn that he spent 10 years fighting there without even realizing it. After that, he finally makes his way to the Adventurers Guild, where Gorin recognizes him instantly. Gorin pulls him into the back room and embraces him, crying tears of joy and telling him how glad he is that he came back alive. Luck then starts stuffing his face with cakes, since it's been so long since he's had real food. Eventually, Gorin takes the cakes away from him, insisting he needs to eat rice gruel instead to keep a balanced diet. Eric then arrives in style, carrying the rice gruel himself, and tells Luck how happy he is to see him again. Luck simply tells him to calm down, saying the sight of a grown man crying doesn't sit well with him. Setting that aside, Eric points out that both he and Gorin have visibly aged, while Luck, strangely, looks younger than before. Luck glances at his reflection and realizes it's true. He really has gotten younger. He guesses it must be the result of absorbing the Demon King's life force after defeating him. Gorin and Eric are left completely speechless the moment they learn that Luck actually defeated the Demon King. Eric explains that the kingdom has been busy preparing its military in case the Demon King ever returned. But since Luck has already beaten him, it's now clear that he deserves some kind of reward. What catches Luck most off guard is the moment Gorin refers to him as Your Majesty. Gorin explains that Eric became king after the previous king decided he deserved the throne, since Eric was a noble who took part in driving away the Demon King. Having taken part in that same effort himself, Gorin ended up being named Grandmaster of the Adventurers Guild. Along with that, Luck also learns that Eric had given him a noble title for the part he played in driving away the Demon King. That's why the statue had been built, since everyone assumed he died in the line of duty. Hearing this makes Luck wonder if being alive now might actually cause problems, since the whole kingdom believes he's dead. Gorin and Eric both see his point, so Luck decides to let the world go on thinking Saint Luck is dead, while he starts over from scratch as an ordinary adventurer. Gorin wonders if that might be far too dull for someone of his level, given that he's an S-rank sorcerer, but Luck tells him it'll be fine, since he's always liked a good adventure. It doesn't take long for Gorin to get him a new adventurer's card, this time under the name Locke instead of Luck. His true stats are also hidden on the card, so to anyone looking, he'll appear to be nothing more than an ordinary F-rank adventurer. The next day, as Locke heads out toward the guild, a blonde girl spots him from a distance and watches him with quiet curiosity, wondering just who he is. Locke arrives at the guild shortly after and is introduced to the receptionist, Aron. He tells her he'd like to take on a goblin extermination quest, but she advises against it, assuming he's just an inexperienced rookie who's likely to get himself killed. That's when a group of adventurers calls out to him, suggesting they team up for the quest together. Aron likes the sound of that and quickly stamps her approval. Outside, the two adventurers introduce themselves as Ario and Ginny. Ario is a mage, while Ginny is an archer. Locke introduces himself simply as a warrior, and with that settled, the three of them set off toward the goblin hideout. Along the way, Locke notices that Ginny is a genuinely skilled scout. She sticks close to the trail and reads it with sharp instinct, quick to catch details others might miss. Because of that, she doesn't strike him as someone who truly belongs at F rank. Even so, Ginny seems to have underestimated just how many goblins they're dealing with. since neither of them notices a set of camouflaged footprints. Goblins aren't clever enough to hide their own tracks, which means something else, something smarter, is likely leading them. Locke briefly considers warning the other two, but decides against it. Since he's essentially training them, he wants them to learn through their own mistakes and grow from the experience. They eventually reach the entrance to the Goblin Cave, and after scouting the area for a while, Locke offers to take the lead while Aereo and Ginny provide covering fire from behind. Working together, the group manages to take down more than 30 goblins, though the strain is clearly starting to wear on Aereo and Ginny, both running low on mana and arrows. Noticing this, Aereo suggests they pull back and retreat, and Locke agrees it's the right call. But just then, a deep roar echoes through the cave. The Goblin Lord has awakened. Locke finds the whole situation strange, since the goblins have been showing an unusual level of coordination all along, almost as if someone has been directing them from the shadows. Just as the Goblin Lord gets ready to attack, a beast girl suddenly appears out of nowhere, throwing herself into the fight and warning the Goblin Lord to stay out of her way. Angered by her taunt, the Goblin Lord swings his heavy club at the beast girl. She dodges the attack with a nimble grace, then strikes his shoulder with her blade. However, the monster's armored flesh is too thick for her to cut through. Realizing she's in for a tough fight, she tells Locke's party to escape while they still have the chance. Locke tells Aereo and Ginny to leave first, so they nod. They wonder if he'll be okay on his own, but he seems more concerned for them. Locke warns the two to watch out for surprise attacks on the way out. As they leave, Locke praises Aereo for leaving instead of sticking around for the sake of friendship. If he had done so, he would only have been a dead weight in a fight above his pay grade. Meanwhile, as the beast girl struggles against the Goblin Lord, Locke casually asks her if she needs help. Feeling angry that he ignored her warning to run, the girl tells him to do whatever he wants. However, she warns him to stay away from the fight since she doesn't trust his abilities. Locke observes her fight, seeming bored by the dull action. He tells the girl that she's losing to the goblin, which hurts her pride. She wonders if Locke thinks she's weaker than the monster, but he explains that he was actually referring to her sword. As if on cue, the beast girl's sword suddenly shatters from the Goblin Lord's relentless onslaught. With the girl seemingly unarmed, Locke asks if she'll consider his help now. However, she still refuses and tells him to get out of the cave. She pulls out another sword from its scabbard and charges the Goblin Lord, ready to defeat him with a fresh weapon. Suddenly, her momentum is instantly crushed as the Goblin Lord actually knocks the sword out of her hand. This time, Locke decides to stop playing, and he directly jumps into the fight. The girl watches, shocked, as he confidently claims that he'll destroy the monster by himself. The Goblin Lord roars at Locke to stun him, causing the girl to cover her eyes. However, Locke remains completely unaffected, and he divides the goblin into 4 pieces with just one attack. Seeing the strange man defeat such a powerful monster like it was nothing, the beast girl suddenly catches feelings for Locke, her warrior instincts stirred by his manliness. However, when he asks her if she's okay, she feels somewhat afraid of him. She then introduces herself as Ja, daughter of the chief of the Eastern Beast tribe. She sincerely thanks him for saving her life before asking about his identity. Locke suddenly claims he's an F rank, so she obviously doesn't believe him. Then, he proudly shows her his F rank card. Seeing this, Ja has no choice but to accept the reality. However, she wonders why he's so happy about being at the very bottom. He ignores her concerns and asks about her adventurer rank. Ja reveals that she's a B rank and apologizes for asking him to leave earlier. At the time, she had no idea that she was speaking to someone miles stronger than her, understanding that she was simply concerned for someone who looked weak. Locke reassures her that he doesn't mind. He then asks her what kind of monster dwells in the very bottom of the dungeon. Hearing this, Ja becomes speechless, since the dungeon boss was supposed to be a secret. Although Ja tries to hide it at first, Locke easily sees through her lies. Seeing that she doesn't want to expose her secret, he turns around and starts heading deeper into the cave. Ja wonders what he's doing, so he tells her that he plans to defeat the final boss on his own. Although Locke was only hired for a small quest to exterminate goblins, he feels worried that the dungeon's final boss will harm the people living in the surrounding area. Hearing his words, Ja suddenly tells him that the final boss is no laughing matter. For some reason, she completely forgets that its identity was supposed to be a secret. She reveals that the final boss is a vicious vampire lord, leagues above the goblin lord. Locke admits that vampires are a much more troublesome foe. However, he remembers that she was trying to clear out the dungeon, so he wonders if she was seriously considering fighting the vampire on her own. He reminds Ja that a vampire is a powerful creature, so there's no way that someone like her can defeat one on her own. Ja knows he's right, but she claims that it's her duty to defeat the vampire. Locke nods and starts walking again, which leaves her disappointed, wanting to share her story. She starts speaking, even though he didn't ask her. A while back, Ja's tribe was fighting an entire clan of vampires. Although they had defeated most of them, one of them survived and heavily injured her father. Then, it fled the scene and vanished into this cave. In the Beastman tribe, letting an enemy escape is considered a great disgrace. Hence, she wants to avenge her injured father by defeating the vampire herself. Locke asks her if her honor will still be restored if she takes his help. Ja explains that it will be even if she receives assistance, so he hands her his sword to replace the one that was broken. Ja feels confused since this would leave him empty-handed, but Locke claims that he fights better barehanded. At first, she thinks he's only being polite for her sake, but then he proceeds to destroy a bunch of goblins like they're made out of paper. Ja is stunned by Locke's incredible strength, unaware that he developed incredible strength and martial arts skill after being forced to survive against the Demon Lord's army for an entire decade. With Locke's help, they soon reach the dungeon's final room. There, the vampire lord laughs sinisterly as it senses Ja's presence. He reminds the naive girl that even her powerful father was unable to scratch him, so she has no hope of laying a single hand on his body. Ja gets enraged by his words, and the vampire lord prepares to take her down. After seeing him up close, Locke realizes that the vampire deliberately manipulated the nearby goblins to appear weak so he could lure adventurers inside and drain their life force. The vampire is impressed by his deduction skills, but he doesn't think much of Locke's strength. He points out that although vampire magic does not work on Beastman, he can actually control a human's mind with his spells. Hearing this, Ja realizes she messed up by dragging Locke into her mess. Although Ja tries to warn him, Locke starts moving towards the vampire lord in a trance. As Ja blames herself for endangering his life, the vampire starts gloating, thinking he has already won. He taunts Ja to choose whether she wants to die by her friend's hand or his own. The vampire continues to bluster, but suddenly, Locke punches him smack in the face. After getting humbled, the vampire wonders why his special technique didn't work. Locke simply explains that he has a high resistance to mental debuffs, but his explanation doesn't satisfy him. The vampire claims there's no way a human could resist a vampire lord's attack. Hearing this, Locke exposes the so-called vampire lord for actually being a lesser vampire pretending to be great. This causes the vampire to grow enraged, and he furiously charges at Locke, only to get punted back into a wall. Locke continues to mock the vampire, calling him a lesser version, so the vampire tries to avenge his good name. Although he attacks with tendrils of darkness, Locke easily avoids them and uses a high magic circle to drastically speed up his body. In the blink of an eye, he appears right in front of the vampire and uses his Drain Touch to suck all of his energy. After getting defeated, the vampire lord wonders who Locke truly is. In response, the happy adventurer claims that he's just a random F-rank adventurer. Suddenly, the vampire claims that Locke has unleashed a powerful curse on himself by defeating him. Although he doesn't believe the vampire's words, Ja rushes in and cleaves its body in half with Locke's blade. The vampire is shocked to realize that he can't regenerate his body after the sword's slash. In his last moments, he warns Ja that she has done something irreversible to his metal. Ja returns Locke's sword, saying that it released a strange power when she cut through the vampire. He claims that she was just imagining it, since he can't just reveal it's the fallen demon lord's sword. Then, Ja digs through the ground and finds a cursed medallion dropped by the vampire. She explains that every person the vampire kills or absorbs releases an energy of resentment, which nourishes a curse power in the metal. Locke wonders why no vampires had these medallions 10 years ago. Suddenly, the vampire laughs with his remaining strength. Since his metal is exposed to the world, he claims that it will open a portal to the dark dimension. Hearing this, Locke finally gets serious. The vampire brags that his supposed dark gods will destroy the earth by entering from the portal, so Locke recalls that the dimensional rift is the same place where he was stuck fighting for 10 years. At the time, the humans had not discovered any way to enter the portal from their world. When the demon lord attacked from his portal, Locke and his friends jumped in. However, the portal closed off later in their world. Because of this, Eric and Goran could not return to rescue him after escaping the dimension. Suddenly, Locke slashes the coin in two and absorbs the curse power inside. The vampire is shocked, unable to believe that someone could absorb such a potent curse power without any side effects. Locke tells the vampire that even if the portal had opened, there would have been no demons coming out of it. The reason behind it is obviously himself, since he has already exterminated all of the demons inside. After hearing this, the vampire finally realizes that Locke used the demon lord's sword to absorb the curse, and he makes the connection. He wonders if Locke is the legendary great sage Luck. However, Locke shuts his mouth before he can say too much. Unfortunately, Ja has already heard him, so the cat is out of the bag. Locke apologizes for breaking the metal. Ja doesn't mind it, so both of them start heading out of the dungeon. She wonders if Ario and Ginny are doing okay, but Locke is confident in their abilities. Suddenly, Ja stops as she realizes that she addressed him by his first name. He stops, stunned by her words. She then asks if he really is the legendary sage, so Locke asks her to keep it a secret. She smiles, feeling excited to carry the secret of such a great personality. Later, they hand over the monster drops to the Adventurers Guild. The receptionist is surprised by the gigantic pile of materials, so Locke and his party explain that the dungeon just had more goblins than usual. Hearing this, the receptionist apologizes on the guild's behalf for misjudging the mission's difficulty. Later, Ja thanks Locke again for all his help. He smiles, asking if she can share her tribe's intel on vampires in return. Although he was able to defeat the vampire lord today, he feels worried that other vampires could use unknown methods to plunge the world into the dimensional rift's chaos again. Ja smiles, asking if he can speak directly to Goran. Locke nods, so she tells him to alert Goran to be on the lookout for vampires. She then offers him half of her medallion. When Locke asks why, she explains that it will serve as proof to convince Goran to keep an eye on the vampires. Locke accepts the medallion, and Ja leaves. He then takes it to Goran, who seems extremely worried after Locke disappeared for 3 whole days. While the two of them chat, someone quietly sneaks up to the room to eavesdrop on their conversation. After reminding Goran that he's not his mother, Locke explains that the demon lord was actually just a pawn used by the so-called dark gods. Goran wonders what material the medallion is made of. Despite his skills as a sorcerer, Locke is also unable to identify the material. He suggests showing it to an alchemist, and Goran agrees to consider it. As Locke turns to leave, Goran sincerely thanks him for protecting the rookie adventurers, Ario and Ginny. Locke accepts his thanks and heads out, but soon bumps into a girl. He wonders who it is, so Goran starts introducing her as his daughter, Chelis. However, she leaves before he can say anything else. Locke wonders if Chelis hates him, but Goran explains that she actually hates her own father. Since her childhood, Chelis has wanted to become an adventurer. Although she got a B rank ability, Goran refused to let her become one, worried that she would get hurt because of her inexperience. Locke reminds him that one can only get experience in the real world, but Goran refuses to let his daughter outside before consulting his wife, who is currently visiting a foreign nation. Then, he asks Locke for a favor. Goran explains that once his daughter turns 15, she will be considered an adult and allowed to become an adventurer on her own. Because of this, he hopes that Locke can keep an eye on her when she eventually escapes. The next day, Locke watches Chelis train with her sword, feeling annoyed that he has to babysit her from now on. However, Chelis gets even more annoyed as she catches him looking. Later, while Locke is having lunch at Goran's mansion, Chelis enters the room and sits across from him. Under her intense glare, Locke feels awkward and expects some kind of insult or rejection. Instead, she suddenly accuses him of being her father's illegitimate son, causing him to break his teacup in shock. Locke instantly denies her assumption, but Chelis thinks he's lying. He wonders how she's so sure, so she explains that she has all the evidence against him. Firstly, she points out that Goran waited for his wife to leave the house before inviting Locke inside. Second, she thinks that her father was a little too happy to see Locke, even though he is supposed to be just a friend. Finally, she recalls how worried her father got for Locke when he wasn't showing up. While Locke is annoyed by Goran's excessive concern, Chelis thinks that her father cares too much for him not to be a family member. Hearing Chelis's delusions and how Goran and his wife have fallen out, Locke wonders if this entire family is messed in the head. He He then notices the head butler glaring daggers at him. To avoid his wrath, Locke tries to convince Chellies that he's not her long-lost brother. He explains that Goran was worried so much because he had been battling dangerous demons for 10 years. Also, Locke tells Chellies that he looks way younger than he is, which is why she mistook him for Goran's son. Hearing this, she gasps, and Locke thinks he has finally gotten through to her. However, Chellies only changes his status from younger brother to older brother. Locke firmly tells her that he's not her older brother. This time, she refuses to listen to another word from him. As Chellies starts acting like a smug older sister, Locke decides to pull out his adventurer card and explains that if he were Goran's son, he would share his family name. After taking a look at it, Chellies decides that Goran must have disowned Locke to protect his honor as a man, feeling upset that Locke was abandoned by his supposed father. She promises to speak to Goran to acknowledge his son. Faced with this stubborn girl, Locke starts to lose all hope for Goran's family. In the end, he removes the protection spell from his adventurer card, revealing that he's actually the Great Sage Luck and an S-rank adventurer. Chellies is extremely impressed by Locke's credentials, but because of his young age, she thinks that the Great Sage is still her older brother. She points out that Locke's statue looks just like her father, which enraged him even more. It takes a while for Locke to finally convince her he isn't her family. In the end, she apologizes for her earlier stubbornness. Chellies herself admits that she can be stubborn, but Locke thinks that's an understatement. Now, he actually understands why Goran was so opposed to letting her adventure on her own. With her hard-headed nature, this foolish girl would get in trouble left and right. However, Locke also thinks that her stubbornness can be a plus point. He thinks that Chellies has great willpower and strong conviction, which can help her stay strong during tough times. Knowing this, he decides to give her a chance at adventuring. Locke learns that Chellies has already secretly joined the Adventurers Guild, so he takes her out to do a quest with him. After picking up an E-ranked quest from the guild, they head into a forest for their objective. Along the way, Chellies enjoys exploring the natural scenery. She takes in the surrounding trees and takes a dip into a freshwater river, having the time of her life. After their break, they head deeper into the forest to find their objective. Eventually, they reach the target village. There, they learn from the villagers that a suspicious number of mythical beasts have been spotted in the nearby areas. Although these monsters are massive and powerful, for some reason, nobody has died upon encountering them. Hearing this, Locke thinks something is strange about the mission. If there were truly a group of powerful mythical monsters rampaging the area, the guild would have never assigned this mission to weak E-ranked adventurers. Instead, knowing that the beasts have not killed or hurt anyone, the guild likely thinks that these mythical beasts are fake. Chellies doesn't understand what this means, so Locke explains that someone is simply creating illusions of mythical beasts. Soon, they head over to the area where the beasts were reported. Once they arrive, a dragon appears out of thin air, roaring powerfully to declare its presence. While appearing incredibly lifelike, the dragon's roar kicks up a massive cloud of dust into the air. Seeing this, Chellies starts to doubt if the monster is just an illusion. Locke reassures her that despite its looks, the dragon does not have the aura of a true mythical beast, so his earlier suspicions are confirmed. After telling Chellies that she'll be safe against the dragon, he encourages her to fight it. She runs towards the dragon, which tries to swat at her with its tail. Chellies dodges the attack with great agility and jumps up the creature's back. Then, she starts running towards the dragon's head. As the creature growls in frustration, she tries to stab her sword into its head. However, the dragon blocks her sword with its claws. Chellies falls back and tries again, but it keeps blocking her strikes no matter what. While observing her fight, Locke admits that Chellies is a genuine B-ranked warrior despite her sheltered upbringing. Still, he feels surprised that the dragon can physically block her attacks despite being an illusion. Usually, an illusion is not nearly as lifelike as this creature. Instead of a regular illusion spell, the dragon seems to be a massive, nearly solid wall of mana. Because of its concentrated nature, the mana can actually block Chellies' attacks. As Locke continues to observe, the dragon seems to get frustrated with Chellies. It leans its head back, preparing a white-hot fireball in its mouth. Then, it blasts Chellies with the fireball, who goes rolling away in pain. Seeing this, Locke finally decides to step in. He floats up and puts his hand on the dragon's head, copying the technique used to create it. Then, he uses his draining touch to absorb all of the mana inside. After defeating the dragon, he tells Chellies to stop rolling like she's burning. She She gets up, realizing that the flames weren't actually real. Locke explains that fighting an illusion head-on will always result in failure. Celes gets annoyed, wondering why he didn't warn her earlier. She also asks how to fight an illusion, so Locke tells her that she needs to defeat the illusionist. However, since illusionists usually hide themselves, it's hard to find their location. In case she can't find the target, the only choice left is to run. Hearing this, Celes gets angry, since she wouldn't want to run after wasting so much effort. Locke reminds her that if a hidden illusionist decided to hurt her, she would literally die. Hearing this, she admits that running away definitely sounds better than dying. Locke explains that fighting an illusion head-on will always result in failure. Celes gets annoyed, wondering why he didn't warn her earlier. She also asks how to fight an illusion, so Locke tells her that she needs to defeat the illusionist. However, since illusionists usually hide themselves, it's hard to find their location. In case she can't find the target, the only choice left is to run. Hearing this, Celes gets angry, since she wouldn't want to run after wasting so much effort. Locke reminds her that if a hidden illusionist decided to hurt her, she would literally die. Hearing this, she admits that running away definitely sounds better than dying. Then, Locke turns around, knowing that the illusionist is still present. He calls out to the forest and asks them to reveal themselves. Since this person has not hurt anyone with their illusions, Locke promises to treat them kindly. After waiting for a bit, he doesn't get a reply. He then warns the illusionist that he'll investigate the matter by force since he's on a quest. Finally, the illusionist's voice comes out. He explains that they're guarding something precious in the forest. Locke asks if they can't move their precious item, so the illusionist admits that it's hard to move. Hearing this, Locke nods. Since he doesn't want to harm an innocent person's valuables, he doesn't mind ending the quest in failure. Hearing this, Celes gets very upset. Locke also reminds the illusionist that if he cancels the quest and returns, the guild will just send other adventurers to solve it. However, the other adventurers might not be as kind as him, so they might try to force the illusionist to reveal his secret. Hearing this, the illusionist finally agrees to show him what he's guarding. In his hiding place, a strange vortex opens up. Then, the hooded boy finally walks out into the open. As Celes sees the horns on him, she is shocked, so he quickly covers them. Meanwhile, Locke doesn't care for his species at all. Instead, he praises the boy for his superb illusion spell. After he thanks him for the compliment, Locke introduces himself as a random F-rank adventurer and introduces Celes as well. The boy explains that he's called Lucira, and he belongs to the fiend race. In a quiet voice, Celes asks Locke if they can trust Lucira, since fiends are evil beings. However, Locke corrects her misconception. Although fiends are beings with great mana, he explains that they are simply peaceful mages who prefer to avoid fighting. He then asks Lucira to show him the thing he is trying to protect. He nods and starts leading them into the forest, so Locke wonders why he's trusting them so easily. Lucira points out that Locke was easily able to see through his illusion, meaning that he's a much stronger sorcerer than himself. Despite this, he didn't try to investigate his secret by force, so Lucira thinks he's trustworthy. Soon, they arrive at an ancient ruin. Deep inside the ruin, Lucira opens the door to a secret room. Then, he tells someone called Lord Jebberga that he's back. As Locke follows him, he is shocked to see that Mr. Jebberga is actually a chicken, while Lucira seems to be incredibly respectful towards it. Celes casually dismisses it as a random chicken. Hearing this, Lucira gets enraged and informs her that Jebberga is actually a sacred creature called a Seraphal. Curious, Locke asks why he holds Jebberga in such high regard. Lucira then reveals that the magical bird possesses the power to change the world. He explains that Jebberga is descended from the original Seraphal, which awakened their world for the first day ever. According to legend, the Seraphals called helped define the boundary between day and night, which shaped their world into what it is now. Because of this, Mr. Jebberga has the power to open and close dimensional rifts. Hearing this, Locke remembers the words of the vampire, who told him that a portal will open in their world, allowing the dark gods to invade it. Locke wonders if the vampire's true target is Mr. Jebberga for this reason, and Lucira nods. He reveals that his tribe used to live peacefully in the north until the vampires invaded and killed told everyone to steal the mighty chicken. However, the chieftain gave Mr. Jebberga to Luchira for safekeeping, and he somehow escaped the carnage alive. Ever since then, he had come to this temple, since his tribe had told him that the temple was protected by an ancient barrier. Suddenly, Locke stabs the floor of the temple. His sword easily breaks it, revealing that there's no barrier around the building. Since the temple is exposed, Luchira and Mr. Jebberga is in danger of falling into the vampire's hands. Locke asks him to move to the capital, where he will be protected. Luchira hesitates, so Locke reassures him that he'll protect Mr. Jebberga no matter what. As proof, he shows Luchira his sword, revealing that he has already defeated the Demon Lord. Realizing this, Luchira recognizes that Locke is the great sage. Locke then tells him that he has done a great job of protecting Mr. Jebberga, since he has the power to protect the world. Hearing this, Luchira starts crying, happy to know that the sacrifice of his family and tribesmen was not in vain. On their way out, Luchira starts bickering with Celis. Suddenly, Locke shoves Luchira away as a vampire tries to attack him. Then, he knocks the vampire away. Shocked, the vampire wonders who he is. Locke refuses to tell a lesser creature his identity, which causes the vampire and his buddies to get enraged, knowing that they're after Mr. Jebberga. Locke gets serious and incinerates all the vampires into ashes. Nearby, a vampire has been secretly observing their interaction. In order to warn his friends at home, this vampire tries to escape by transforming into countless bats. Even Locke is helpless against this transformation, but suddenly, Mr. Jebberga lets out a loud call. This call erases the vampire mid-transformation, which leaves Celis completely shocked. Luchira explains that Mr. Jebberga controls the flow of dimensions. By transforming into bats, the vampire was trying to forcefully shift into another dimension. However, Mr. Jebberga refused to allow this, so the vampire was erased from existence. Hearing that the chicken has such great power, Celis wonders why Mr. Jebberga needs anyone's protection. Luchira explains that the chicken's powers only work when the target is in the middle of dimensional travel. Otherwise, anyone can scoop it up like a regular bird. Later that night, the three of them reach the capital city. There, they find Jia waiting for Locke. Celis instantly gets suspicious of her, so Locke explains that she's a friend. Hearing this, she starts bragging to Jia about being Locke's apprentice. Then, Jia tells Locke that she needs to discuss something in private. She explains that the vampire race is truly up to something big. In her investigation, she found that they're all being led by a vampire High Lord, which is a powerful creature that can control all vampires to do its bidding. Hearing this, even Locke gets worried, since the High Lord can do incredible harm with his intelligence and powerful forces. Jia reassures Locke that her tribe is doing its best to thwart the High Lord's plan. However, Locke knows that her tribe alone can't handle an enemy of that level. Hearing this, Jia admits that her tribe isn't doing too well. Ever since her father went on that vampire hunt, he's been recovering from his injuries. Even now, he's not fit for battle against the High Lord's forces. Unfortunately, the rest of Jia's tribe is filled with warmongering idiots, so they voted to launch an attack against the vampires anyway. Hearing this, Locke understands why she needs his help. Aside from this, Jia admits that she has another goal. It turns out that this goal is even more important than fighting off the High Lord. Jia reveals that the vampires are after a legendary chicken, which is said to hold the power to control dimensions. With a sense of urgency, she tells Locke that they must find that chicken as soon as possible to protect it from the vampires. Hearing this, Locke is stunned, knowing that he just ran into the very same chicken a few hours ago. Seeing his blank reaction, Jia thinks he isn't treating the chicken too seriously. Locke tries to explain that he already knows, but she starts explaining more about Mr. Jebberga. After narrating all the legends about the mighty chicken, Jia hopes that Locke will help her protect it. Finally, Locke tells her that he has already found the chicken. Hearing this, Jia stops her explanation. Locke then gets up and walks over to the room's door. As he opens it, Celis falls inside, exposed as a cheeky eavesdropper. Behind her, Luchira gets upset, since he had already warned her not to spy on them. At first, Celis claims that she wasn't eavesdropping at all. Then, she's unable to come up with an excuse, so she eventually apologizes to Locke. He sighs, telling her to apologize to Jia as well. Celis quickly obeys, so Jia forgives her with a smile. As long as she doesn't leak the intel to someone else, she doesn't mind the young girl knowing. Then, Locke invites Luchira inside and introduces him as the guardian of Mr. Jebberga, as he tells Jia that the chicken in his arms is the legendary Seraphal she's looking for. She screams out in shock. Jia is amazed that Locke found her secret target so quickly, so he explains that it was just a coincidence. He admits that he has already seen Mr. Jerberga's powers in person, so they can be sure that this chicken is the real deal. After hearing this, Jia respectfully greets Mr. Jerberga. With the chicken secure, they start planning how to deal with the High Lord's forces. Jia explains that the vampires are hiding around a mountainous area, but Locke thinks the intel is too vague. She sighs, explaining that it already took her tribe a lot of sacrifice to find this information. If they want to learn more, they'll have to investigate the dangerous area on their own. Hearing this, Celes gets excited, thinking she'll get a chance to fight the High Lord's forces. However, Locke coldly bursts her bubble, pointing out that she's an inexperienced F rank. Hearing this, Celes complains that Jia is still going with him. Locke reminds her that Jia is a proper B rank adventurer, so she can hold her own in the wild. In addition, Jia's beast tribe requires her to fight against the vampires, so her situation is different from Celes. Thankfully, Locke knows how to comfort Celes as well. He assigns her the duty of protecting Mr. Jerberga at home. At first, Celes isn't convinced, but Locke reminds her that the magic chicken will be unguarded back at home if there's no one around to protect it. He tells Celes that she's completely qualified for being its guardian, so she finally cheers up and accepts his decision. Then, she hears the sound of Goran's carriage coming home. Jia is curious about her father, so Locke tells her that Celes is Goran's daughter. Soon, Goran enters the room, happy to see him. Locke is annoyed by the motherly treatment, but Goran thanks him for looking after his daughter. Locke smiles, giving Celes some praise for her strength. Hearing this, Goran gets even happier. Behind them, Celes feels guilty about treating her dad harshly. As she calls out in a soft voice, Goran turns to look at her. She then starts crying, which completely melts his defenses. Faced with his daughter's tears, he quickly forgives her and tries to calm her down. After she calms down, he asks why she was so angry with him in the first place. Celes explains that she suspected him of having an illegitimate child, so Goran laughs at her imagination. Then, she accidentally slips the detail that she treated Locke like her younger brother. Hearing this, Goran is shocked enough to spit out his tea. He asks Celes if she bothered Locke with her usual antics, so she runs away instead of answering the question. After she leaves, Goran hastily apologizes to Locke for all the trouble she has caused. Even he doesn't know how his own daughter turned out like this. Watching the poor man beg for forgiveness, Locke recalls that Goran used to put him and Eric in trouble as well with a similar attitude. Still, he remains silent to avoid provoking him anymore. Then, Goran gets up, worried that his daughter will get manipulated by someone evil. Now, he wonders if he should rethink his decision to let her explore the outside world again. Hearing this, Locke panics and reminds him that he'll protect Celes from any malicious people. Relieved that his daughter can still pursue her dreams, Goran starts crying and thanking Locke again. At this moment, Celes enters the room to ask for something. When she sees Locke and Goran standing so close, she thinks she's in some kind of romance novel and gives them some privacy. After that, it takes them both over an hour to explain that they're not secret lovers. Finally, Celes starts apologizing, but Locke tells her to remain silent in case she forms yet another ridiculous conclusion in her head. Getting back to work, Goran recalls that the vampires are regrouping for another scheme. Locke tells him about the High Lord, so he gets even more worried. To reassure him, Locke reminds Goran that he'll assault the vampire stronghold himself. Goran wonders if there's a way for Mr. Jerberga to make the fight easier for them. Lucira reminds him that Jerberga can only attack vampires mid-transformation. Also, Locke thinks it will be too annoying trying to actively protect the weak chicken while fighting the vampires on the battlefield, so it's better to leave it back at home. Jia also adds that if the vampire High Lord kills Jerberga and drinks its blood, he will obtain enough curse power to open a dimensional portal on his own. Hearing this, even Mr. Bergerga is shocked. Because of this, Locke decides that the chicken must be kept under maximum protection. Goran suggests hiding Mr. Jerberga in Eric's palace, since the royal building is the most secure place in their entire kingdom. Locke agrees, so Goran sends a request to Eric. A little while later, they obtain permission to enter the royal palace. Instead, they sit down for tea. As one of the maids serves them, she notices Mr. Jerberga in Lucira's arms. Meanwhile, Locke is surprised by the number of staff working inside the palace. Goran explains that all of these servants are Eric's young apprentices. As the king, he accepts the poorer children of the kingdom as apprentices to give them a better life. This is done as part of a welfare scheme, so Locke thinks that Eric is a good king. Soon, Eric enters the room with his two daughters. After he greets Locke, his daughters, Charlotte and Mary, also introduce themselves. While Charlotte is happy to see the sage Locke in person, Mary is so excited that she asks him for an autograph on her picture book. Seeing this, Locke gets stunned. He wonders where the picture book came from, so Eric explains that it was his idea to create picture books for the children across the kingdom, telling the stories of Locke's heroic adventures. Although Eric did this out of love for his friend, Locke feels uncomfortable at the thought of being a living legend. Lucira reveals that even Mr. Jerberga loves his storybooks, so Locke is completely flabbergasted. Then, as Mary notes the chicken, she asks Lucira for permission to pet it. Soon, both girls start fawning over the magical bird. Seeing this, Goran tries to send the girls away so they can get to business with Eric. Celis takes the girls away, following a maid to another room so the adults can discuss things in private. Eric thanks Goran for coming before apologizing for bringing his girls, even though they're here for a serious talk. Eric wanted to show Locke his two daughters since they're his pride and joy. If Locke didn't make the sacrifice of staying in the demon realm, Eric could have never returned home to watch them grow. Goran also nods, thanking Locke for allowing him to raise Celis. He reminds Locke that the entire kingdom respects him as their hero, so he gets a bit flustered. However, Locke still thinks that he shouldn't be a national celebrity. Then, he asks Eric how Li-Fi is doing. He explains that she's handling the kingdom's holy order at the cathedral, so Locke promises to visit her later. Meanwhile, the maid leads Celis and the girls to a room. As they enter, she promises to bring sweets, but her eyes flicker with evil intentions. Back in the royal room, Eric learns about that High Lord's plan to open a portal to the dark dimension. For now, Locke thinks they should guard Mr. Jerberga most carefully to avoid accelerating the vampire's plan. Eric promises to use all his castle's defenses to protect the chicken, so Locke nods. Then, he looks at Jia, reminding her that it's time for them to hunt the vampire lord. Goran stops him in his tracks, wondering how he plans to defeat such a powerful foe. At this, Locke reveals his master plan. Both Goran and Eric listen intently as he explains that he'll first gather all of Jia's tribe members. Then, with the tribe providing cover for them, Locke and Jia will charge straight into the horde of vampires. Hearing this, both Goran and Eric are horrified by his lack of wit. Locke still thinks his plan works fantastically. He explains that if he and Jia distract the vampire army, the Beast Tribe can send an assassination squad to kill the lone High Lord. Goran thinks he's got it backwards, since the High Lord is the strongest of them all. Locke points out that fighting an entire army is still harder than one strong opponent, so the tribe will be better off leaving the army to him. Jia agrees with Locke as well, but she thinks that he's the only one who has the power to land the killing blow on the High Lord. Goran feels worried, thinking that some of the Beastkin will lose their lives. Jia explains that small sacrifices are nothing compared to fulfilling her tribe's desire for revenge. While their discussion continues, in the other room, Celis watches the young girls play. Although Locke assigned her a serious duty to guard Mr. Jerberga, she knows that he was just being kind. In reality, she's just an F-ranked girl being a babysitter for some kids. Knowing her strength, she thinks this role is the most suitable for her. Then, the girls walk over to her to play another game. Suddenly, they spot something glowing behind her, so Celis quickly turns around. One of the decoration pieces glows with a dark light, casting a strange spell that fills their room with a dark gas. Celis quickly tells the two girls to run away, but they find the door locked from the outside. Outside, the maid from earlier walks away, casually acting as if nothing happened. Suddenly, some vampires appear from the dark mist. Celis rushes to draw her sword, but then she realizes that her weapon wasn't allowed in the palace. With nowhere left to run, she grabs a nearby lamp to defend the young girls. As one of the vampires charges at her, Celis smashes him away with the lamp. Then, the other two vampires try to charm her with their eyes. Celis quickly covers her eyes, reacting just in time to protect herself. Then, she fights the other two with her eyes covered. Despite the disadvantage, she brutally beats up both of them. However, as she is in the middle of fighting, the first vampire lunges straight for the two girls. Celis quickly adjusts and blocks him before standing guard over the princesses. Although she continues to fight bravely, the vampires soon break her makeshift weapon. With nothing left to defend herself, Celis covers the two girls with her body and resigns herself to fate. At the last moment, just as the vampires vampires reach for them, an explosion rings out as Locke blocks them. Locke praises Chelis for doing a great job of protecting the princesses. As she watches in shock, he turns to face the vampires, ready to wipe them out. That was episode 4. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.